Good morning, guys, or good afternoon, whether you're joining me from the present or the future. Welcome back to another FutureFight Vanguard video. Happy Tuesday, guys. We're going to get into our next Bang Dream deck that we're doing for our FutureFight series this week. And the deck that we're going to be covering today is the Afterglow deck. So again, I don't know anything about Bang Dream and the different bands associated with Bang Dream. But this deck is called the Afterglow deck. Basically, in Vanguard terms, it's very similar to the Mordred Phantom Shadow Paladin deck, at least in my opinion. It, of course, works different because it's an entire different deck, but the concept is pretty much the same, and the win condition is pretty much the same as Mordred. So if you guys are interested in that, then you'll probably be interested in this. But we're going to get right into the video. If you guys haven't already, be sure to subscribe down below and click the bell button so you don't have to miss a single video going forward from us. Also, be sure to click the like button and comment down below letting me know your thoughts on the deck or Bang Dream in general. Are you a big Bang Dream fan? Let me know down in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out my second channel, Let's Plays Animes, in the description as well, if you guys are interested in anime, animation, and or video games. And also be sure to check out that join button down next to the subscribe button if you guys are interested in supporting the channel more. I do like a lot of different stuff and offer a lot of different stuff there. So if you guys are interested in contributing a little bit more to the channel and to me, I would be very, very appreciative if you so. And also, last thing, check out our Twitch, which is LPA Empire. I'm going to be doing a bunch of combination stuff between both my channels on there, so you guys can follow that Twitch channel so that you guys can see when I go live for streaming. But with that being said, let's get right into the deck today. So, like I said, this is the Afterglow deck. So just like we talked about before, if you guys watched the last video, yesterday's video, the Popping Party deck. So basically, this is the Bang Dream set. The Bang Dream clan in general is a combination collaboration between Bushiroad and, you know, some outside thing. And so that's why something from outside the game is getting added into Vanguard. But basically all the Bang Dream cards have like a couple different quirks about them. So first of all, the whole Bang Dream clan is Force as a clan, so you get Force 1 or Force 2, obviously increasing your power or increasing your critical on your Vanguard or Rearguard circles. And then I think this deck works the best with Force 1 because this deck actually creates multiple Force markers, or it has a possibility to create more Force markers. So obviously if you're making Force 2 does not stack, and so decks that create Force markers usually just prefer to just go Force 1 because those do stack and it's more and more and more power, which makes it harder for your opponent to deal with. Also, Bang Dream has these special order cards that are called music cards. So I call them music orders, but they're really just called music. And so they have like different songs, I guess, played by the band or whatever. And those order cards, basically when they're played, they get placed to the middle center back row of your Vanguard circle. And then they stay there for the whole turn as a rear guard, and then at the end of the turn they retire. Other than that, they work completely synonymous with other order cards. You can only use one per turn, and all the other things about orders, you can't block with them, etc, etc, etc. So let's get right into the deck. So this deck only has 4 grade 3s as far as like ones that you can ride. So we're running 5 grade 3s, but only 4 of them are normal unit cards. This card is called Important Friends Ron Mitake. So what Ron Mitake does on the Vanguard circle is during your main phase, you can once per turn rest up to 2 of your rear guards, and then you can choose the same number of units as the number rested for this cost, and they get plus 10,000 power. So what this means is that ideally you would prefer to rest your some of your back row units and then give power to your front row, whether that be to your Vanguard or to either of your front row rear guards, because you're setting up for basically 5 attacks where you go attack with rear guard, attack with rear guard, attack with Vanguard, and then restand. So that's the ideal finishing combo for this deck, or the ideal aggressive turn for this deck. So that's how you're setting up for this. So keep that in mind when you're using the first skill of Ron Mitake. So the second skill of Ron Mitake is also an axe skill. So during your main phase, if an order was not played this turn, you can counterblast 1, search your deck or drop zone for up to 1 Afterglow music and play it. And if you search your deck, shuffle your deck. So this is a very, very extremely good ability that most of all the Bang Dream grade 3s have. because basically it just allows you to get an order out of your deck for free. You get whatever order you want, you can go directly to it, and you can even use orders that you've used before by getting them from the drop zone, or if you damaged it and you need to like heal it off, then you can still use it by counterblasting one with Ron Mitake. And that's what allows us to run some of these order cards that we're running. And I just realized that this is actually the wrong build. So we're actually going to go back into it now. So the only difference between that last build and this build is that we run one of each of the grade 2 and grade 3 order, and then 3 of the grade 1 order, as opposed to 3 of the grade 2 and 1 of the 3 and the 1. So moving on to, I'm going to do all the normal units first and then go back to the order cards because it makes more sense that way. So moving on to our grade 2s that are rideable, we have 4 Burning Heart Ron Mitake. Again, just like most of these Bang Dream cards, you have like one main name of a card, and those cards are not meant to be, you know, your important pieces or whatever, but they're just helping you, you know, get the pieces of the deck and get the combo of the deck rolling along. And so in this deck, that's Ron Mitake. So we do have a grade 1, a grade 2, and a grade 3 Ron Mitake, and they're usually your Vanguard ride targets, as well as on the rearguard circle, they do their own thing to further the deck along. So the grade 2 is really good in my opinion. So 4 Burning Heart Ron Mitake, and what it does is Vanguard rearguard when placed, you can reveal the top card of your deck, and if that card is an Afterglow card, then you put it into your hand and you return it to its original state if not. So basically, if you reveal it and it's a normal unit in this deck, it's going to be an Afterglow card because all the normal units in this deck are Afterglow cards. If it is not an Afterglow card, that means that it's a trigger and you get to put it back on top of your deck, so you get to be able to tell when you're going to check a trigger, essentially. Now, sometimes that does suck because sometimes you have to use search abilities after you use this card, which obviously shuffles your deck, so you're not going to check that trigger anymore. But oftentimes the search ability is more important than you checking a trigger that turn because you're trying to further yourself along to the goal of eventually getting the full board that you ideally want to have in this deck. Moving on to our next grade 2, we have 4 Mood Maker Himari Urehara, or Yuhara. So Himari, what she does is she has 2 rearguard abilities. The first one is continuous on the rearguard ability. If you have 4 or more Afterglow units on your rearguard circle, they cannot be chosen by your opponent's effects. So this is really good because once you have that full board that I was talking about, that ideal board, and the ideal board, just in case you guys are wondering, is Ron Mitake grade 3 on the Vanguard circle. Then you have Himari on the rearguard circle, Mocha on rearguard circle, Tomo on rearguard circle, and Sugumi on rearguard circle. So once you have that ideal setup, you will have 4 Afterglow units on your rearguard, which means that your opponent cannot choose your cards for effects. And that's important when you're playing against retire decks, you know, decks that put your cards at the bottom, like Gear Chronicle or anything like that. Like, your opponent just cannot select your units and do anything to it. The only way that they can get rid of your units is by attacking to them or using a like a card that doesn't target, like Blade Master. When it destroys your whole board, it just says all instead of saying a specific card, and so that does not, like, that gets around Himari, unfortunately. So as you guys can see, most of the Bang Dream decks probably have like an extremely bad matchup against decks like Blade Master that blow up your whole board because you need pieces to, you know, do your combos, and it really hurts when you lose all your pieces or your board to an effect like that. Okay, and then Himari's second ability on rearguard circle is an activation effect. So during your main phase, you can counterblast 1 and rest a rearguard, and then you draw a card. So basically, because this card costs a counterblast, if we just said rest the rearguard and draw a card, then we'd be using it like every single turn. But because it costs a counterblast, you have to be very wary of when you're using this card, because this deck can be kind of counterblast heavy with what you have going on. So you definitely don't want to, and you don't have any counter charge in this deck. So you definitely want to be careful about how you use your counterblast, and I pretty much only use the second skill of this card if I'm searching for more pieces or I don't have what I need yet to do the ideal turn. Moving on to our last grade 2 of the deck, we have 4 Super My Pace Mocha Aoba. So what Mocha does is she has a continuous rearguard and Guardian Circle ability that says all of your Afterglow cards on Guardian Circle get plus 5,000 shield. So this is really cool because when you have, when you don't have the ideal board, and like let's say that you can like play 2 of these in the early game, that means that all your Afterglow cards in your hand, and on, like basically when you would guard with them, they would get plus 10,000 shield if you have 2 of these on board. Now, the ideal field only contains 1 of these, so that will mean that all of your Afterglow units are still getting plus 5,000 shield. But again, our triggers are not Afterglow cards, so only the normal units are. So that means that it turns your grade 3s into 5k shields, your grade 2s will be 10k shields, and your grade 1s will be 15k shields. So that's amazing when you think about the fact that, you know, just usually a 15k shield is enough to guard like a regular attack that attacks you. So just being able to block with any of your grade 1s for that in the place of the trigger is so powerful, and it helps you do a lot. Then moving on to our grade 1s, we have 4 Hating Lose. I feel like this card should be called Hate to Lose, but whatever. 4 Hating Lose Ron Mitake. So this is the grade 1 Ron Mitake that we were talking about earlier in the deck profile. And so when placed on Vanguard or Rearguard Circle, if you have an Afterglow Vanguard, which you always will, because all the cards in this deck are Afterglow cards. So if you have an Afterglow Vanguard, draw a card and discard a card from your hand. And then this ability may only be used once per turn by a card name with the same card name. So basically you can only play 1 grade 1 Ron Mitake a turn and use the ability. You can play multiple Ron Mitake grade 1s in a turn, but you can only use the ability once. I felt like I needed to clarify that. Moving on to our next grade 1, we have 4 Big Sisterly Disposition Tomoe Udagawa. So what Tomoe does is on a Rearguard Circle once per turn, when she is rested by another Afterglow ability card, which is basically either your Vanguard, Himari, or Mocha are the cards that rest in this deck. So whenever it's rested by another Afterglow's ability until the end of your turn, your opponent gets, your Vanguard gets plus 5,000 power. And then if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, Counterboss 1 and your Vanguard gets plus 1 critical. So again, because of the Counterboss, like we were saying, this is something that I prefer to use my Counterboss for. So you save your Counterboss so that you can get a crit every single turn using it with Tomoe, because it definitely makes your turns a lot more pressuring, especially when you start going for like your final turn to try to end out the game. And then our last grade 1 is 4 Sugarific Sugumi Hazawa. So basically, Sugumi, what she does is on the Rearguard Circle once per turn, when she is rested by another Afterglow ability, you may stand this unit. So obviously, you see that there's a bunch of effects that rest cards, and you have these 2 grade 1s, which are your ideal grade 1s for both your back row. When they're both rested, they both do something, so you definitely want to choose them as your rest targets, but you guys will see in the games like what the ideal order for resting things should be and how you should be going about that. Then for our grade 0s, we have 1 Always Start Ron Mitake. This is the grade 0 that, just like every other starter in the game, draws you a card when you ride over it, and then if your opponent is grade 1 or greater, you get a quick shield that you can use to guard or discard for any means or purposes that you would like. Then for our crit triggers, we have 8 crit triggers, 4 draw and 4 heal. We have 8 Glittering Memories. Glittering Memories has an ability that says you may have up to 12 Glittering Memories in a deck, so that's why we run this, because it is the only crit trigger that you can run for Bang Dream. So the fact that it has this ability just means that we can use it to run like 8, 12, however many crits we want, and have them all be the same card instead of the typical 4-card limit of the deck. And then for our draw trigger, we have Everyone Made the #1 stage, which is our Sentinel draw trigger PG. And then we have Best Live for our heal. So obviously the only heal in the Bang Dream set as well. And then let's talk about our order cards. So I'm going to pull them out onto the guard circle. And so we have On Your Mark being our grade 3 order, Scarlet Sky being our grade 2 order, and YOLO being our grade 1 order. So let's talk about them. So basically, On Your Mark is your most powerful order card. Usually that's how the Bang Dream decks work, is that your grade 3 order will always be your most powerful, followed by your grade 2, and then followed by your grade 1 when you really just can't do either the 2 or the 3. And because orders are once per turn, you want to use whatever, once per turn fits you the best. So if you can't get the requirement to do the grade 3 order, do the grade 2. If you can't get the requirement to do the grade 2 order, do the grade 1. And also, when you have the grade 1 in your hand in the early game, especially on turn 1, you definitely want to use it just because of that order once per turn thing. You probably won't get another chance to use a grade 1 order for the rest of the game, assuming that you always have access to the 2 and the 3. So definitely use the 1s while you can. That's why we run more of them, to hopefully start with them in our hand when we have like a grade 2 and 3, and then we can have like one of these 2, hopefully. And then if not, just use it as discard fodder. You can guard with them for PGs, stuff like that. So let's talk about our 3 order cards. So first is On Your Mark. This is what makes our maximum kill turn, like offensive pressure. This is what makes that go off. So if we have an On Your Mark, basically, like I said, all the music order cards will go to your back row rearguard circle just like this, and they will be staying there till the end of the turn. And then after that, they will go to the drop zone. So, like I said, On Your Mark, it will go here when you play it. And then when your Vanguard with Ron Mitake attacks, you may stand one of your units with Mocha Aoba in its card name, Himari Ueda, Tomoe Ugawa, and Tsugumi Hazawa in its card name. And then if 4 cards were stood, and then you can get 2 imaginary gift force, so you can generate 2 force markers. So what that means is that when you're on the grade 3 Ron Mitake and you have On Your Mark on the rear, you want to attack with rearguard, and then after you have the ideal board, we're gonna go ahead and move these cards down so you guys can see what the ideal board looks like. So if you have this exact field like this, you have Himari on rearguard, Mocha on rearguard, Tomoe on rearguard, and Tsugumi on rearguard. This card requires that. So if you're missing even one of any of these pieces, do not do On Your Mark because it will be useless. If you're missing one of these pieces, go for Scarlet Sky because it allows you to directly get one of those pieces. However, your attack order will go something like this. So you'll attack, and then when you attack, your On the Mark will trigger. It will restand all of these, and then you will generate 2 force markers. So that's very, very good. That's why I said this deck is like Mordred, because it generates force markers and restands, does 5 attacks. So it's really, really pressuring for your opponent, and it can really kill them really fast as well. And unlike Mordred, this is not locked to your opponent being on grade 3. So you can do this on your opponent while they're on grade 2 as long as you have all the pieces. So that's really explosive, and it can really kill your opponent really fast. It also doesn't cost a counterblast or anything. It's absolutely free as long as you have all of the requirements. So no counterblast, no soul blast, no cost, nothing. So you can literally have 0 counterblast and 0 soul and just go swing, 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 swing. And then assuming that On Your Mark is on the board, restand, gain 2 force markers. And that's just really hard for your opponent to deal with in a lot of situations. Next up, our grade 2 order, which is Scarlet Sky. This is probably one of the, if not the best order in the deck, behind the grade 3, obviously. But this card, when placed on rearguard circle, which basically when you play it, it'll get placed to your back rearguard circle. So when it's placed on rearguard circle, if you have an Afterglow Vanguard, which you always will, search your deck for up to 1 Afterglow unit card with a different card name from each of your units on Vanguard or rearguard. Reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle your deck. So basically, this card allows you to fill your spaces. If you are missing one specific piece of the Afterglow, like let's say that I have Mocha, Tsugumi, and Tomoe on the rearguard circle, and I'm missing a Himari. This Himari's in my deck. I can play the Scarlet Sky, and then once I do that, I can get this Himari to my hand so that I can instantly play it, and my board is complete. And then next turn, if I'm able to maintain the same board, or I have extras in my hand, then I can play On Your Mark the next turn, and that's what you want to aim towards setting up. And then also this has a second ability that says at the beginning of your battle phase, when it's on the rearguard circle, stand up 2 of your Afterglow cards. So again, you have a lot of units that rest each other, and so when you go to your battle phase, you'll go boom, and then because Scarlet Sky is there, it will restand 2 of your Afterglow cards so that you have some attacks. So definitely be very strategic about how you rest your cards, how you use your abilities, and what order you are on as far as your musical order, so that you know how to best go about your turn. And then our final order, which is the grade 1 YOLO. Like we said, it has 2 rearguard abilities, and then only use this card when you can't use the other 2. Because pretty much like once you're out grade 2 or higher, Scarlet Sky always becomes the go-to order if you cannot On Your Mark. So just use your YOLO as like discard fodder or anything like that, or use it during turn 1 when you can. So YOLO, what it does is when placed, you draw a card. So it's basically a 1-for-1. You play this card down, you draw a card, and then at the beginning of your battle phase, you stand up 1 of your Afterglow cards. So you can rest something, use its ability, and then basically go for the restand 1 instead of restand 2 like Scarlet Sky. Alright, so with that being the deck, we're going to get right into the games here. So loading up Afterglow 1. So first game, we're playing against Great Nature. This looks like it's the new Great Nature Big Belly deck. Our opponent's starting hand is pretty trash. I mean, obviously I didn't know that when I was playing against them. because I can't see their hand like I can in a recording, but now we can see that. But our opponent rides grade 1 for turn and rides into Cecile. We go for Tomoe as a ride. Nothing happens. We drive check a grade 3. And then our opponent plays Matilda, goes for top 5 with Mini Belly and misses it. And as you guys can see, when you're playing a Bang Dream deck, you're always looking at your hand to see which pieces that you have. So you guys can see that I have a 3, which is important. And then I have 2 Mocha Aoba and 1 Tomoe, which means that we're missing a Sugumi and the other grade 2. So that's where we're going to be focused on getting from the next turn forward. But our opponent goes for Mini Belly, whiffs, and then uses Scale Toucan to bounce Mini Belly and call it back, and he whiffed all those times. So I guess he's just really unlucky. He did the grade 3 search 3 times and didn't get it. But our opponent does attack us, gets a crit, and we take 2 damage, one of those being a draw. So now we have Himari, the grade 2 that we're talking about. And then we went for Ron Mitake. We looked at the top card, and it's a crit. So we can ensure that we're about to check a crit, basically. We played a Mocha Aoba because it is an extra. And so if it gets attacked by our opponent, we don't really care because we have 2 more in our hand. And then we go for Tomoe as well. And we actually end up playing another Mocha Aoba as well because it is an extra. So then we use Mocha Aoba to Soul Blast and rest. And then all of our units get plus 5k. And then from Tomoe, this gets plus 5k as well. So we attack for 15 into the Vanguard. And so when we attack 15 into our Vanguard, he hits a draw trigger, which since he knows that I'm about to check a crit, this makes it extremely easy for him to guard because he just throws down a crit for each one of my attacks. And that's it. He doesn't have a grade 3 here though, but he does draw a Mini Belly, so he looks at top 5, and he chooses not to G-assist, which is interesting because if he G-assisted, he definitely could have got to this Isabel. But I guess he didn't want to do that. So he stayed on grade 2 and he attacked for 17. We no guard. And then he attacks our rear guard for 16, which we don't care about because that's an extra anyways, right? So for turn, we actually draw the 1 card that we're missing, which is Sugumi Hazawa. So we basically play Himari, we play Sugumi, we use Ron Mitake to rest our 2 back rows, and then we give plus 10 to both of our grade 2s. We use Tomoe's skill to give plus 5k to Vanguard, and we can't counterboss 1 for the crit because he is grade 2. Then we use Sugumi's skill, it restands. Then we use Ron Mitake's second skill to get on your mark from our deck because we have the full setup combo, as you guys can see. And then we use Mocha Aoba to Soul Blast 1, rest our back over rear guard, and then all of our units get plus 5k. So we go into battle phase here. We attack for 25, which it would be really hard for him to guard with this hand unless he's going to PG. So he takes it, no damage trigger, we attack for 25 again. He takes it, no damage trigger, and then we attack with Ron Mitake. Using On Your Mark skill, we resend our whole board and we generate 2 force markers, each going to our different rearguard circle. And then he PG's Vanguard, which I don't know why, but you know, he PG's that. And then he is planning on taking both of these and trying to hit a heal, and he does not hit it. So I think he definitely should have just G-assisted for the grade 3. Like, he might have still died, but it might have still been worth it to try to, you know, get a little bit more advantage before going into that turn with me where I did my, you know, max play. So second game, we're playing against what looks like Luard because we see Drag Prince LaRoot. So our opponent goes first, draws for turn, and rides Abyssal Owl, draws a card from the starter. We ride grade 1 Ron Mitake, and we draw 2 and discard 1. Draw 1 from the starter, draw 1 from Ron Mitake, and discard 1 because of Ron Mitake. We attack, we check a Sugumi. Our opponent rides into Maka, uses Maka's skill to call Sharon. Sharon Soul Blast to countercharge and get plus 3. Then he calls Double Morfessa, and then he attacks us for 10. We no guard. Attacks us for 15. We no guard. And attacks us for 21. We no guard. We get a heal. For our turn 2 play, we go for riding Himari because we do have 2 Himaris in our hand. Then we go for playing a Mocha Aoba because it is an extra. And then we play a Sugumi. So we chose to play this Ron Mitake grade 1 on rearguard circle. And we draw the grade 3 on your mark and we discard it because it is an order that we can get at any time using the grade 3. So we don't need to do that. So then we play Scarlet Sky and we get Tomoe, which is the only grade 1 that we're missing. And then we use Mokaioba to Soul Blast 1 and rest this card. And then we use, at the beginning of the battle phase, Scarlet Sky restands this Ranmatake. We attack, he intercepts. We attack for 15, he no passes, and we check a crit. And it's 38, and he takes 2, and he heals 1. Which is actually very important because, like, later in the game, he was very close to dying, and I just needed 1 damage on him. So, and then he, like, you know, you guys see right here that he healed. So, he does G-Assist to get into Dragheart Luard, which is unfortunate for him. But he does use Vanguard skill to counterblast 1 and put 2 normal units back into his deck so that he can go into Drag Driver. He places another force marker on the Morfessa circle, and then he uses the skill of Drag Driver to call 2 grade 1s. So he calls Black Sage Sharon and Knight of Strict Order Souls. So he Soul Blast 1 and countercharges, gets +3. So he attacks us for 28. Which our hand is not defensive at all, but our hand is very aggressive. So we have our play, but we don't have much defense at all. So our opponent attacks us, hits a crit, then attacks us for 26. And I was thinking about whether or not I wanted to block that, but since we're at 10k, I definitely did not want to block that. And then he attacks us for 38. And when he attacks us for 38, we guard for 25 here. And then we're thinking about what we wanted to guard with because, again, your pieces are important. And so since we already have a Tsugumi, and Tsugumi gets plus 5,000 shield from Mokaioba, that makes 40k shield exactly. And that allows us to survive his turn with our pieces intact. So then our opponent ends turn. We ride Ranmatake. And we reminded him that he goes back down into Dragheart Luard. And then we have our full board set up here. So we go for Mokaioba. And we go for Tsugumi. Using Ranmatake to rest our back rows. You guys know the deal, just like last game. Vanguard gets plus 5k and a crit because of counterblasting. And so then we go for On Your Mark. And then we attack for 25. So if we would have done this a little bit differently by resting Ranmatake, which I think we should have done, we could have forced more out of our opponent, but I wasn't thinking about it at the time. And so our opponent is able to guard both of our rear guards with 1 card blocks. And then when we attack with Vanguard for 2 crit, our opponent proceeds to PG us to avoid that extra crit damage. And then we do check a crit, so unfortunately we can only do 3 damage. And so, like I said, if we would have played that a little bit differently, I think we could have won right there, but we didn't, and so we get screwed as a result. Our hand is definitely not able to guard by any means necessary, especially Luard's offensive pressure. So our opponent goes for using Luard's retire skill, retires 2 grade 1s and draws a card. And then he retires 1 of our cards, but he can't in this scenario because we have Himi here. And Himi, like I was saying before, you know, we cannot be chosen by card effects. So 1 of our cards cannot be retired because of Himari. So then he goes for Dragheart and goes into Drag Driver. Drag Driver gets another force marker. And then he uses Drag Driver skill to call 4 grade 1s. So as you guys can see, this deck is just so super duper powerful. It's very hard for your opponent to deal with because it's just so much offensive pressure so early, so quick. It also might have been a different game had I gone first because I would only be dealing with, you know, I would have had to only deal with 1 Luard turn from here, but Luard going first is definitely what also swung this game towards the Luard player. But we get attacked for 30, and there's no way that we can block like we said before, so we end up taking that damage for game. And then loading up our final game, which is the Afterglow 3. And last game, it looks like we're playing against Royal Paladin, specifically Alt Mile. So we say good luck, have fun to our opponent. Our opponent draws for turn, rides Sisyphus, checks top 5, does not get a grade 3, and passes turn. We draw for turn, we ride the grade 1 Ramitake, we draw 2 and discard our order. We attack for 8. Our opponent no guards, we do get a draw trigger and draw. Our opponent gets a crit on damage and then rides Suleiman. Looking at the top 7 for an Alt Mile, playing the Alt Mile to the board, and then playing this Herald here and playing this Lucius here. Attacks us for 21, which we block, and then he attacks us for 23 with Suleiman, and we no guard. He does get a crit, so we take 2 damage. Unfortunately losing a Sugumi, but we don't care as much about the Ramitake. We ride grade 2 Ramitake, and it's a trigger on top. So I was planning on plussing a lot with these, but I didn't expect for there to be a trigger there. So basically now we use grade 1 Ramitake to draw into that draw trigger. I also did that because I wanted to get a PG because All Mile is really aggressive. So just knowing that there was a PG there, adding that PG to my hand would be very, very good. But we get another card off Ramitake in the form of Sugumi. And then we do another Ramitake and it was a trigger. So then we go for Scarlet Sky and we search into our grade 3 Ramitake because we needed a grade 3. So we attack for 10, which he takes, 18, which he takes, and then 18 again, which he guards finally with a crit. And then he goes for Blue Sky Knight All Mile going into Force 2. He uses Lucius to put 1 card to soul and call a card out. Then he uses Alt Mile to counterboss 1 and discard 2 cards. And then both the grade 2s that he's going to get would go to his hand, but he's choosing to immediately play them. So he plays Starlight Violinist and Liverot, and then off Liverot he gets Lamorat. And then he uses Lamorat skill to counterboss 1, and Lamorat gets plus 10k. Because he has all of his face down damage now, his Vanguard gets plus 15. So Vanguard attacks us with 2 crit, we no guard, we get a crit on damage. Then he attacks our rear guard for 20, which we don't care about, so we let it go. He attacks our other rear guard for 28, which we don't care about, we let it go. So we stand and draw, we get Ramitake. Then we have a Mokaoba, and we have this, and we're missing the grade 1 card, so I tried to Himari here. Counterboss 1 and rest this to see if I could get it, but I did not get it. So what we end up doing is Ramitake's second skill to get the Scarlet Sky music order, and basically that allows us to directly search for the grade 1 that we're missing, which is Tomoe. And then we hold it in our hand because it's obviously, you know, not useful to have the full combo this turn, so it doesn't even matter. So I held it in my hand for extra shield, just in case. And then we use Mokaoba and Sugumi skill to give power to our Vanguards, or to our board. So we attack for 25. Our opponent blocks that. We attack for 28. Our opponent no guards that. We do check a crit, so crit Vanguard power to rear guard. He does check double damage trigger as we attack for 48, so that definitely helps him guard with minimal cards from his hand. Then he rides Aero Divine Knight Alt Mile, playing over it with Tion, which I don't necessarily know why he did that, but he did it anyways. He was trying to use the grade 1 ability to shove in the soul, but his grade 1 says only when grade 2s are placed not from hand. So he goes for using Aero Divine Knight Alt Mile and calls a Lamorak out of drop zone, just so that he would be able to still use the grade 1. And then I was telling him, since he called here, that he wouldn't have been able to do that because the grade 1 would still be there if he was going to theoretically do it like that. And he agreed. So he basically put this grade 2 back to his deck. And then he shuffled and he chose to just leave it there. And so since he still looked at his deck, he shuffled. And then his grade 1 would give power to Lamorak, plus 15k. And then because he has no face-up damage after using Lamorak, then all of his Aero Divine Knight All Mile's Vanguard ability activates, and all of his grade 2 units get plus 10k and plus 5 shield. And because he set himself up like this with Tion, Tion can't attack, so it's actually his 2 attacks this turn, which he loses out on some pressure, which was not really good for him. And so he attacks with his rearguard column for 55 to crit. So we PG here, and we drop a Himari since it's extra. And then we PG again and drop the Ramitake grade 1 because it's an extra piece. And this time we draw for turn, we ride another Ramitake, we put another Force 1 on the rearguard circle. And then we are going to use Mocha Elba, Soul Blast 1, and rest this Ramitake grade 1 that we don't need. So then we play over it with Tomoe. We use Ramatake's first skill to rest these 2 and give 10k to both of our rear guards. Then we use Tomoe's skill, +5 and a crit with a counterblast to Vanguard. Then we use Tsugumi's skill, Tsugumi restands itself. And then Ramatake's second skill activates, we counterblast 1, and we get the on your mark order from our deck and play it behind our Vanguard as our music order for the turn. So then we attack for 35. Our opponent guards with Belinus. We attack for 38. Our opponent guards with Belinus. And then we attack for 33 using On Your Mark's ability to restand our whole board and generate 2 force markers. So our opponent PGs. We do check a heal, but it does not go off, so we attack for 53. And our opponent is just short of guarding it, and so takes it and gets a heal. Which ironically our opponent loses shield because he now has a face-up card in his damage zone. So he thought that he could use like Starlight Violinist along with Altmal, but he forgot for a second that when you lose that face-up, or when you lose that status of having a full face-down drop zone, then a lot of your cards get weakened as far as their abilities. So that ends up being the game against the Altmal player, and that ends up being the FutureFight Vanguard video for the Afterglow Bang Dream deck. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, be sure to leave a like on the video, a comment down below letting me know what you thought, and subscribe so that you don't have to miss anything going forward. Also, be sure to check out our second channel, Let's Plays Animes. Check out that join button if you want to support the channel a little bit more, and check out our Twitch LPA Empire down in the description as well. But with that being said, this has been your host, Josh Stallworth, on another Cardfight Empire video, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for the Pastel Palettes Bang Dream video. Peace, guys.